Okay, accounting cube for general ledger. Let's start with the end. This is the general ledger report that we're trying to create using analysis services. So what we want here is a report that shows accounting information. And accounting information, the general ledger is fairly complex in that we have these different line items which accountants refer to as accounts, and they're nested. They have a hierarchy. So you have a balance sheet, and you want to be able to drill into this balance sheet to see assets, current assets, and you want to see this against liabilities. And liabilities, now you can drill in and see what these liabilities are. And you also have a different way of having your formatting here. For example, you don't want negatives here. What you end up with is curly brackets instead. I don't really see any negatives here, but and you also want to be able to say, like this is for the entire organization, but we want to be able to drill into the organization and see which parts of the operation are more profitable than other parts of the organization, and where maybe there's a bunch of losses coming from a particular operation. Maybe we want to sell off that operation, or we want to put more management into that operation, or something's going wrong with that operation because it's losing us money or it's making us money. We want to know these, when we be able to drill down and find these things out, where the money is going. And we want to be able to slice it based on date. So that changed the date. So down here you can see we're slicing by fiscal dates. The columns are the organizational hierarchy. The row slicing is parent account key, the account hierarchy, and then you have the amounts. Now, how do we build this out? Well, we build this out with 4 tables. We have a fact table where each of those amounts is going, and each of these amounts is characterized with account information, which tells us the hierarchy for the account that we saw when we were drilling into this. This is the account hierarchy, and that is created here with this built-in reference here, self-referencing table. So we have an account, and then we have the apparent account, which generates the hierarchy. We also have this operator, which tells us how to roll up each of these accounts, because that's part of the complexity too, is the pieces in the ledger have different ways of rolling up. They don't all roll up with, say, a sum. They might roll up with account, or units, or last not empty value, or something like that. So they have different ways that they aggregate, and that is documented for each type of account with this operator. And that's a big part of what we're going to be doing here. That's the business intelligence can pick up on that, and we have a business intelligence wizard which will handle that for us, but we have to set everything up just right. And then we have the organizational hierarchy here, so that allows us to drill down into the organization. And then of course we have a date, your standard date table, which allows us to drill into the dates or slice by dates, like we were doing, up here we were slicing by the date. Okay, so the dim account table. One thing, so once you bring these into your data source view, you then want to create those dimensions. I've created a bunch of dimensions here already, and I've already created these dimensions, but let's look at them just a second here. So here's our account dimension, and when we bring that in, it's going to see this, and it's going to create the account hierarchy for us, which is really good. And we need to make sure, though, that we have some other crucial pieces of data here, and we also want to make sure that the users can only browse by this. So we want to make sure, and this is standard operating procedure here, we want to make sure that this hierarchy is set to false for these attributes, and not, of course, for the hierarchy. We also want to make sure that well, that's okay. So that's it for that. For organization, again, it will create the hierarchy for us, and we want to make sure they can't browse by that. So we want to make sure that we turn that off, and that's pretty much it for that. And we want to, oh, and the date. And the date, of course, you should already have that built. That's a whole several videos could be made about how to create a date, so I'm not going to go into creating the date here. And then, of course, the fact. Now, the fact table, once you bring the fact table in, then I wouldn't create that by itself. I would create that when I create the cube. In fact, so once you've created the dimensions, now you would build cube. Is the cube, because that way the business intelligence will see what you're doing here, and it'll pick up on a lot of things. But right before you build the cube, one thing you want to do is you want to set the unary operator. So you want to select the account and go to Add Business Intelligence, specify unary operator, and come here, and there's our operator. That's that column that tells Analysis Services how to roll up each of the different accounts. So you would select that, and now you would build the cube out, and you would select the fact table as a fact table and the dimension tables as dimension tables. You wouldn't want to mix any of all that up. And then you'll have this cube, and it's pretty straightforward. And then what you want to do is you come and do the amount, and you want to make sure that the format string is the accounting type format string, so that we get the type of numbers that the accountants are happy with. And once you've got that, we then want to do something that's very unintuitive here. We want to right-click on the project file, and we want to edit the database, which is really kind of like, what is that? Okay, well, because we've set up that unary operator, and we've set this up as an accounting type. Oh, that's true too. You want to make sure that this comes in as accounting type. You want to select here, and make sure that the type is accounts. And of course, you want your date to be of type time. So that's important. So the cube will pick up on all that. And so then when you come in here, there will be this accounting type mapping. And what we'll have to do is we'll have to map this name column to the aggregation function. So this is and this is defined in a document, add account intelligence to dimension. And it shows you how to map. This is the mapping account types. So here's the types that are mapped out in that if we go in here, that's mapped out here. You have the account, this is mapped out here. You're into your account types. Let's look at the data. Oops. Now let's go to explore data. So here you have the account type, and so you have assets and liabilities and expenditures, and then you have the operator for how to roll these types up. And this document shows you how that's mapped. So these are the types, and this is how to roll it up. And that is what we're mapping here, from this to this. This is going to be empty, and we're going to leave that empty because this is going to be automatically filled in by the next business intelligence wizard. So okay, so once we have set these to match what these are for those tables, we then want to add another part of the business intelligence. We want to right-click again and add business intelligence, and this time, oops, I clicked on the cube. Very sorry. You want to click on the account again and hit add business intelligence, and here, before we did the unary operator, now we want to define account intelligence, and this is something you'll have to set up. This will be blank. You'll have to check these boxes, and these are the corresponding columns in this account dimension. So you're telling the wizard where to find the account type and that's important because that's our rollup type. And then how to name it. Now in this case we're using the key because the key has a name column which reflects to the account description, and otherwise you would put that here. And this is the chart of accounts, which is that hierarchy. The chart of accounts is the hierarchy for the general ledger. So once you have that all set up, now this will be different if your account dimension is different. If you're setting your account dimension up different, then you might have to set this up differently. And that can get fairly complicated, so I would stick with the example unless you really know what you're doing. Okay, and now you've got to do this matchup again, like we matched up here, but this is a little different. They've got standard names for these different types of accounts, and if you're not using exactly the names they're using, these won't line up. Like this is assets and this is assets, so it might not pick that up, and so you have to actually pick it from your list. So this is a distinct list built off of, this drop-down is a distinct list built off of that account table, and so you have to match these up. Like it definitely, like flow and flow will definitely, it'll pick that up, but liabilities and liability is probably not going to pick that up, so you have to actually come in here and select it. So make sure all these match up, and like here's one that definitely won't. We're calling it income, Microsoft calls it revenue. So you have to make sure you match that up. Okay, so once you do that, this will show that you have all these things matched correctly. So this is sort of a double check here. You could go through this and make sure that everything matched up the way it's supposed to match up. And then of course you'd click finish, but I've already done this. Okay, so once we've done that, we want to go to the measure. So we want to go back to the cube, go to the measure, and we want to set this. This will have defaulted to sum. We want to come in here and change this to by account. By account means that, is that it's going to pick up on what the wizard did behind the scenes to generate the aggregation dynamically based on this operator field. So all that work we did there, that only works if we make sure that the aggregation, so the aggregation is usually hard-coded here. So, but this by account is the dynamic one. So, and that is set up by the wizard. So that's where that magic happens. So that's a hugely important step right there. Now, once we've done that step, and we go back to here, this should be automatically filled in for us. So that's part of doing that last piece of the last wizard we went through, is it will fill this out. And another step you want to do before you run it is go back into the cube, go to dimension usage. Now this should have all automatically been created for us too when we created the cube, and when we went through the wizards, this should all ended up correct. So if you want to double check and make sure that each of your dimensions has a relation to the fact. So, and of course the date will be off of the date key, and the dimension account will be off of the account key. So it's pretty straightforward, and these are all regular relations. We don't have anything tricky here like a many-to-many or anything. They're all regular, and the organization goes off the organization key. So it's all very straightforward, and this should have been picked up automatically. You shouldn't have to touch this, but it's a good idea to come in here and make sure that it's correct. Okay, once we've done that, we can then process the cube and run it, and we should get a cube just like this, and you should be able to drill through it, and everything's fine.